Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's edition of Learning Series with HR Mentorship. Today, we have a very special friend of mine, very special colleague and brother, Ikechukwu Ononkwo, and he'll be taking us on learning and development. Permit me to read a bit about his profile. One of the reasons why we read people's profile is to help us understand where the facilitator is coming from and to also show the journey, part of their journey, and get us to better listen to them so that we will know that these people are busy people and out of the magnanimity of their heart, they are sharing with us from their wealth of experience. Ikechukwu Ononkwo is a senior human resource professional. He's a member of SHRM, SHRM, and he is senior certified professional of the Institute. Currently, he is the lead learning and development at Ikeja Electric. In the past, he had worked with organizations like Human Leadership Resources Limited, where he served in the capacity of senior HR consultant. He also had worked in the banking sector. He worked with Fidelity Bank PLC, and he was in core banking operation. Yet again, Ikechukwu Ononkwo is one of the thriving HR professionals today who have transited from other areas of career into HR. He also worked in the past with Oceanic Bank and a few other organizations. He has several certifications, and he has gone through a lot of trainings in reputable places such as the Lagos Business School, Human Capital Institute, and so on and so forth. Personally, Ikechukwu has been of tremendous support to me. Literally, when you call somebody a destiny helper, he is one of the pivotal people in my career and in my life. Just this year alone, he has introduced me to 3 networks, which has really impacted positively in my career, my personal life, and other areas. Ikechukwu, I'm excited to have you on this call today. I do not take this for granted, and I'm excited that everyone on this call will have a sure encounter as you teach and share with us today. Ikechukwu, you may unmute. You now have the floor. Welcome once again, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Oluyemi. Where did you get all that from? Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's my pleasure indeed. And today, we'll be having a conversation around one critical aspect of HR practice, which is learning, the learning and development function. And I don't consider myself a teacher, but I consider myself a facilitator. So I'm pretty much going to be facilitating a conversation between all of us here, and I'm hoping also that I'll learn from my great colleagues on this platform. So before I go ahead, I would like to, I'd like you guys to confirm either by typing in the chat box or by speaking out to say that my audio is clear enough. You can hear me clearly. Can you hear me and can you see me? Because it's important for my learners to be on my...
Yes, we can hear you. They can't unmute themselves, but hopefully they can type in the chat box.
Exactly, can type. Okay, fine. Great. All right, thanks, Kumbi. Okay, good. 1 second again. So what you can do, write down for yourself what was the first thing that came to your mind when you got this invite. And you can also put down for yourself one thing you like to touch on here. You may want to just type that out. What's your expectation in this hour of learning? What do you want to learn? What do you want to contribute? What do you want highlighted? If you can do that in the next 1 minute quickly. I normally like to do this because one of the things I learned from one of my mentors is if you come to a learning session without an expectation, you're likely going to go away with little or nothing. Okay, so what do you expect to go with? One key thing you want this discussion to cover for you. You can write it out for yourself. If you want, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, so let's go right along. Talking about L&D, I would like to first start by just pointing out some of the things that is happening in the L&D space today. Okay, today we have as a fallout of the new world of work today, you know, L&D learning has gone hybrid and virtual in most parts. Whatever learning program or learning strategy you are implementing, if you're not considering your off-site virtual learners, you are not going to be hitting the bullseye. Also, learning has gone beyond just formal now to social learning. All right, people like to learn in groups. Okay, people like to learn with their peers. We want to associate some form of emotional wellness, okay, to learning programs. And learning programs of today or learn and development of today must continue to look at a combination of approaches. Also, companies are reskilling and recruiting to compete. So it's important that if you're going to maintain that competitive edge, you must have the right people on ground. It's not just it's not okay just to bring in so-called talent into the business, but learning is on the go. Learning must continue to happen, so they have the right people sitting in the right roles, churning out the right results if you have any competitive advantage whatsoever. Okay, again, there's a shift happening now in the L&D space. Learning is much more on the front burner as opposed to training in the in times past. Okay, so we will be looking at that a little bit in the course of our conversation today. There's also growing emphasis on knowledge management. Now, this is one aspect of L&D that is not in the front burner because perhaps how would I say now, it's not a very popular practice, even though some people are doing some forms of knowledge management. But in the course of our conversation today, I'm hoping that I will speak to the bit that highlights the importance of knowledge management in our various environments today. Okay. Of course, I spoke about blended methods earlier on. There are people who need more, are more attuned to more flexible delivery methods. Actually, business is demanding for that, and the world of work today is gradually moving away from the formal modes of L&D. Okay, there are of course new training and learning standards. And I believe that this conversation today will be an ongoing conversation. And then, of course, I am hoping that whether in class and off-site, I'll be happy to provide some of those tips, tools, and techniques to make your L&D a success. All right. So this is not just all. This is just some of the things that are happening today. Can I ask one or two persons to type for me in the chat box what you also have observed is part of the changing landscape in the L&D space today? Can anybody quickly type before I move on? From your perspective, what have you noticed? There are quite a number. I just said to hammer on this, that. And Jacob, you can type if in the meantime, later on, you might be unmuted as the need arises. If you type, I'll see it and I'll read it out. Adaptive and customized learning. Yeah, those are, it forms part of my, and I agree totally with that, Samuel, forms part of the flexible delivery methods. Who is Jacob, please? I think Jacob is not supposed to be in this community. Can we remove him?
I've removed him. I'm tracking the spammers. I'm removing him. Don't worry, just ignore. I'm
okay.
On it.
Well done. Thank you. So thank you, Samuel, for that. Yeah. bite-sized, on the bite-sized, learning on the just-in-time learning at fingertip learning, okay, and all of that. So yes, these are some of the things that are happening. Okay, so let's move right along. So today, what are the other things I would like us to talk about? Today, I want to look at learning and development. Why learning and development, distinction between learning and training. A lot of times these concepts are used interchangeably, but they don't mean the same thing, both in definition and in practice. In theory and in practice, they actually don't mean the same thing, but for some reason, which I may not be able to point to now, we have decided to put them in the same bucket and then use them interchangeably. This is not so. I want to look at the best practice in L&D, how it's done, what these practices are and how it can be used in our various places. Learning transfer is a very important concept to me, but we'll just mention that because it's a huge aspect on its own. And this is where some principles of adult learning comes in. Then, of course, and learning evaluation. Again, I looked at these last two items because in learning practice, these are where you find the gaps in most organizations. But we'll just talk about, go through these talking points for today as my first cut in talking about learning and development. Like I said initially, it's one of the hugest practice in HR, and it's continuously evolving. And then, of course, I don't believe it's something we would like to we can finish right now. So I'd like to ask us a question, okay? In your opinion, what do you think is the purpose for the existence of learning and development in any organization? What do you consider as a reason for the L&D function? Let's type. For obvious reasons, you understand why we can't unmute you all. We're trying to manage some uninvited guests. So let's just type for now. I'm sure we can keep the interactions coming via chats. Yeah, I'm seeing your chats. Wow, thank you guys. Okay. Employee engagement and retention. Employee engagement and retention. You know, sometimes learning practitioners are not able to see the link with this. All right. Indeed, one of the reasons why people leave is because they don't feel that they're adequately trained. They don't feel that they are exposed enough, or they are equipped with capabilities to deliver on their roles, right? Okay, employee growth, knowledge sharing. Yes, to bridge knowledge gaps. Indeed, quite a number of us are saying the same thing here, to bridge knowledge gap and all of that. Okay, we are looking here, and we're all correct, but I would like to consider most of what we have typed as considering the reason for L&D's existence from the operational point of view. Thank you, Samuel, again. Changing behavior is very big, and that's one of the most difficult aspects of L&D, because people issues are mushy issues, all right? But yes, absolutely, one of the reasons, okay, when the L&D function exists is to bring about that change, all right? Thank you, guys. We can keep it coming, we'll be reading, but let's just move along. Okay, so I realized that based on some of the quite a number of reports and surveys that I saw, you know, in the way back when in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century, just the 12% of the world's population could read and write. And if you see, compared to that today, 86.3% of the world's population can actually read and write. And that is simply because of the input of learning, okay? Learning is critical in the journey of any organization. Somebody said one of the reasons L&D exists is to meet the future needs of any company, and I agree with that. So people were not as literate as they are today, and it didn't happen by magic. It wasn't just because of technological advancement, all right? It's simply because of the input of learning and development in all endeavors of life. So I want you also not to just see learning and development really as a function in HR. I see it actually as a practice that transcends, just the HR domain, okay? And that's why it's important that for people who will man the L&D function, there are people with lateral thinking capabilities, people who are able to think strategically and look at the corners. When I mean the corners, they're able to look into the future and then make permutations, all right? So it's beyond just a small function in a corner in our organization, but it's a lifestyle, it's a practice, and it handshakes with every segment of the organization, and is a vehicle that enables an organization to move along with the changes, in that particular sector and the changes in time. And just as Jack Welch rightly said, I don't know how many of you have come across this quote before. It says, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. I usually like to end most of my training with this quote. It's a big quote for me, and is right at the center of the reason, the purpose of learning. Even though this speaks firstly to personal learning, continuous learning, our individual appetite to learn and grow, it also speaks to the need or the reason why L&D exists in an organization, all right? So we know that change is constantly happening, and of course, we already know as HR practitioners that we are in a VUCA world. Our world is called the future. No two futures are the same. Things are changing. The rate of change is, how will I put it now, is beyond, is not what we used to know it to be. The levels of ambiguity we are dealing with are continuously getting complex, and levels of complexity is not something you can quantify. So you must continuously think on the go. So if change is happening at such a flux outside of us, and we ourselves were not making any meaningful change, it means that our relevance and our obsolescence is knocking on the door. So I'll first here say to us, you don't have to be in L&D to continue to pursue change. Change that comes through learning, meaningful change that comes through capacity development on the go, all right? Change that comes from looking out for interactions that can add to your person and that can add to your practice. Are we together, right? So I agree so much with him. If change is happening outside of us, professional changes, industry changes, work organizational changes are continuously much more than the changes that we are experiencing as professionals, all right? It means that very soon, very, very soon, we will not be relevant. So that quote here underscores for me one of the key reasons and one of the key purposes why you have the L&D function. Something else I'd like to share with us is the existence of explicit and tacit knowledge. I want to just believe that we are all aware of what explicit and tacit knowledge mean, all right? Explicit knowledge is simply knowledge that can easily be codified and transmitted. They are usually available in process documents, policy documents, online recordings, online libraries, shared folders, strategy documents, strategy maps, and SOPs, or standard operating procedures. Those are explicit knowledge about a work procedure, knowledge about an organization that you can access and transfer for either immediate or future use, okay? Implicit knowledge, on the other hand, is the application of explicit knowledge in a real life situation for use on the go. And tacit knowledge is knowledge that is existing in people's heads, knowledge that comes from experience. There are certain subject matter experts in your organization that if you ask them how they able to do a certain job, how they're able to solve a particular problem, they may not have an answer for you. They might not be able to document a step-by-step approach for you, but bring them into the room and you find out that you do that thing much lesser. You do that thing quicker and faster than you would have if you were looking at a document. We had an issue in the office some time ago, some days ago actually, and there was need to quickly in 24 hours develop an app, okay, to enable us manage some of our external guests, you know. So we had somebody who possessed the tacit knowledge, and when there was somebody else who could do it, but there were some aspects of that app that he needed to rely on somebody on. So on his own, he looked at it, it would have taken him 48 hours. But we need to bring somebody who knew that thing from A to Z to join him, even though he was a junior, he was a much junior person, but he possessed knowledge that wasn't codified or documented anywhere. So he was necessary for him to be part of that team in resolving and generating that job. So the function and the job of L&D or an L&D professional is to be able to channel explicit knowledge to areas where they are needed in the organization, and then also look for interesting ways to, you know, tease out tacit knowledge from where they exist. So the work here is first to identify where these things are found and then begin to tease them out in using a blend of approaches so that other people will benefit them and transfer or transmit or translate that tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge. So it's a continuous cycle. So L&D is not just a paper or an operational thing. All right. And this is actually at the heart of knowledge management. Okay. This screen you're seeing is the end-to-end of what knowledge management seeks to accomplish. All the other things around it are just means, models, and ways around it. Let me pause and ask you guys, can you hear me? The room seems to be quiet. I want to be sure. You can type out.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you, sir. So, again, in addition to all that has been said so far, the learning and development function exists, like Samuel said, to enable behaviors that drive core values. You know, most times when we are measuring performance, we always look at high flyers as people who are able to deliver results. But oftentimes we neglect the impact of such people's behavior, you know, in the organization, how it affects teams, the impact on other people's productivity and all of those things. But the learning function ensures that the behaviors that an organization considers important are highlighted, documented, and imparted on the workforce in order for them to be who they say they will be, in order for them to maintain employer branding, in order for them to deliver the promise they intend to deliver to their employees and to their customers. All right. Learning, the L&D function also exists in order to support the business in developing capabilities that support the realization of corporate objectives or corporate strategy. Okay. Every year, which is why L&D strategy continuously is linked to the business strategy. I don't bother talking about training for any year without being in tune with what that year's strategy is. There has to continuously be an alignment between what the business seeks to achieve in any given year to any learning program that I'm going to be investing in. And that's why most times people complain that their training budget is being cut, their training is not giving enough attention as it ought to give. If you can fix this, if you can demonstrate alignment with your learning spend, with the business core objectives, with the business strategic goal, then you will, trust me, you will find your learning goals and your learning budget giving the right support. And you see, I have been on both consulting and the side of practice. So I can tell you, even where I am today, there are certain events that they insist that L&D must be a part of it. Okay? My budget is fought for as well. Yes, they might cut my budget, but there is no year I cannot have a budget. It's not possible. No matter how bad it is, they must make space for L&D spend, and it's in hundreds of millions. Okay? We must continue as professionals to demonstrate that alignment with our L&D focus and the business objective. All right? Okay? L&D also promotes productivity and drives innovation and creativity. Whatever programs you're putting in place, whatever initiatives coming from the L&D space, you must be able to link it to business productivity. There must be that clear line of sight without us speaking too much grammar. You must be able to demonstrate the contributions of your L&D practice, your L&D initiative to innovation, creativity, and then promote and productivity. And I'll tell you for free that if your L&D practice, process, and initiatives are not creative or innovative in themselves, I really doubt if you can foster or facilitate any innovation or creativity. Like begets like, right? So if we do things the way we do things, we just like to do serve our meals in the same saucer, we're going to be getting pushbacks as time goes on. All right. As human beings, education is the reason why we develop as species. All right. Every advancement we have made in life is tied to knowledge. Education is tied to advancement in knowledge and advancement in education. And L&D is a combination of all. Okay, so no matter how things are around us, we must continue to ensure that these things are featuring in our plan. Okay, learning organizations are often considered as successful organizations. Therefore, it's important that the L&D practice is right at the center of facilitating organizational learning. A learning culture must be initiated by the L&D function or the L&D practice. It may not necessarily be owned by the L&D practice, because that's when it becomes success. When you have arrived at success, right? When you have achieved success, then your L&D, your organization becomes a learning organization. It means learning happens on the go. Learning happens as need arises. Learning happens as a practice. It is no longer a forced thing. So you see, learning sessions, learning programs, demand for learning, learning initiatives are happening in other areas from the function, from the business. And the good thing is that they continue to partner or to seek partnership, leadership, or direction from the L&D function. That is success. Okay. Of course, learn and development function exists to contribute meaningfully to part of employee experience. I remember one time I took a senior member of staff based on our conversation in the year and what we were seeking to accomplish, and we put on a program, you know, and this is somebody who has been to Harvard, to LSE, and all those kinds of, you know, top, all right? So by the time we sent on that training, the feedback was amazing. I was even shocked that at that, I know somebody at that level had not had that kind of exposure. So it was a reassessment and a reevaluation for this member of senior management. And I could see the changes in how she managed her people and how she carried on from that point. Of course, we could tell the level of productivity that added to the business. Okay. So yes, now we know, and like I will say, these are just some of the key things, reasons why the L&D function exists in any given organization. All right, there could be more, and of course, please feel free to type them in the chat box. So moving right along, just so that we know, learning and development simply is the process of acquiring and developing knowledge, skills, capabilities, behaviors, and attitude through learning or developmental experiences. Okay. Most times, for those of us who just, when we hear L&D, all that comes to our mind is training. That's a limited way of seeing the function, right? L&D is a process. If you ask me, it's a lifelong process. And what this process seeks to achieve is the acquisition, the development, and the fine-tuning of knowledge, skills, and capabilities and behaviors, through a couple of experiences that are expected to be developmental in nature. Okay, that's when you look at L&D as by way of definition. When you come to learning, if we're in a class now, I would have done a little exercise around this, but we don't have all the time, so we'll just go right along. Okay, learning simply has to do with the activity of obtaining knowledge, obtained either by study, practice, or apprenticeship. Okay, it's an activity. Learning is an action verb. All right, it has to do with something you need to do to acquire knowledge. All right, relevant knowledge, are needed particularly for to solve problems or to get things done. Okay, the Concise English Dictionary puts it that knowledge or skills acquired through experience, study, or by being taught. Okay, now let's go on to the next talking point, which is the distinction between learning, training, development, and then of course education. Now, training involves the application of formal processes to impart knowledge and help people acquire skills so that they can perform their jobs. Okay, training, I would like you to consider it as a short-term, task-oriented, and targeted on achieving a change in attitude or acquiring a skill in a particular area. More often than not, training is usually related to a job. Before I go ahead, let me take on Samuel's input, right? He says learning is intentional process, if I'm correct. Not sometimes it is the learning sometimes is not intentional, but what we must be intentional about learning, it is the person who is intentional about learning that will learn through events, projects, assignments, activities, and even failure. All right, so a HR professional must carry a learning mindset, must be intentional to groom him or herself in such a manner that you are eager to learn. All right, so most times learning is not intentional, right? Learning can come from events that you can be put on a project. All right, and then you, in the course of being in that either cross-functional or team project, you begin to discover, if you're intentional about it and you're open to learning, you begin to discover gaps or new knowledge that is beginning to come your way. Sometimes, like Mike also said here, and thank you for that, sometimes you learn by mistakes, okay? Which is why I like to tell my team, somebody said learn by baptism of fire. I tell my team, don't be afraid to fail, okay? Because valuable lessons come from failure that nothing else can ever teach you. It should make you to be confident to try out new things. Worst case, you wouldn't get it, okay? Where there's a problem is when you're asked to do something and you're not patient enough to get clarity on what you're asked to do, and you then bumble along. That's a different thing, okay? But ensure you clarify the context of the project or the assignment you need to do, all right? You need to then go ahead and go right into it, knowing that if I miss it, if I fail, it's a lesson point for me, okay? So yes, learning may not always be intentional, but we as professionals must have that mind to learn. Open yourself for surprises, and then you will be surprised and you will see what you can get from that. Loretta is saying, but when failing, won't it affect your performance appraisal? Again, that's an operational way to look at things, right? Your appraisal is one event in the course of your life, but learning, like we see here, learning is a continuous process of acquiring and developing new knowledge and skills and behavior through training, through failing, through other cognitive processes. All right. So if your professional appraiser, for instance, was not good this time around, next time around it will be good. I'd rather you focus on learning than the performance appraisal, okay? So, but the thing is, a lot of us are either too shy or too proud to admit to our gaps, to admit our errors. Some of us don't even know where our strengths lie. Some of us don't even know where our weaknesses lie. So because we're not getting or asking for constructive feedback on the go. Now, what I said about the learning mind, the person who has a mind to learn will not wait for feedback to come. He or she will always go and ask, demand for feedback. This thing that I did, where were the gaps? What should I have done better? How could I have improved myself? And the thing is that when you go ahead of time to ask for feedback, whatever comes back to you is something you are prepped up for, okay? So whether it's hard, harsh, since you went for it, your mind is better positioned to receive it. And if you have that habit of continuously asking for feedback, trust me, you will also be a lot better, okay? I normally say to some of my students, self-development is executive learning, all right? Most of us want to wait, for someone to send you on training. Training is an activity. Training is task-oriented. Training is short-term, and it is good, all right, for you to learn a skill, for you to learn how to do something quickly in the office, for you to learn about a new process, right? Okay? But we as individuals, we owe it to ourselves to continuously spend and be spent in the area of learning. I know that some of us have budgets. You have budgets that you keep, but do you have a budget for your learning? I know you have gone to school, you've done your master's or you've done other things, but do you currently have a personal university where you train from, where you build capacity from? Remember, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds your rate of change on the inside, then your end is near, okay? It means your relevance is approaching and will not need you anymore. So we need to play in the area of 2 and 3, learning and development. While training is good, those one-off engagements that we are sent on, it's our responsibility to continuously learn and seek developmental opportunities for ourselves. Development on its own has to do with ensuring that your potentials are honed, they are widened, they are made better to prepare you for the opportunities in the future, okay? You need to continuously eyeball that, okay? When I travel, for me, travel is a huge learning experience for me. Feeding is learning for me. When I'm watching a movie or I'm watching anything, I'm looking for things to learn from, okay? I want to know, I'm constantly benchmarking against myself yesterday and today, all right? Because I know that human beings are not kind. Once your relevance has peaked, they drop you like a piece of rag. So for you not to drop me, it's my responsibility to continue to be relevant to my peers, to my colleagues, to my superior. So if you're in the L&D space, you are in HRs for that matter, and business, your colleagues are discussing business strategy, your colleagues are looking for ways to solve problems in the office, and they are not considering you, then something is up. It's a sign for you to check your obsolescence meter. Am I getting obsolete? Is my relevance beginning to wane? Then I've got to do something about it. Okay, so there is a distinction between learning and training and development. Okay, learning is a continuous process, which is why, you know, understanding these concepts must affect how we put our initiatives together in our place of work. A person who has training in their mind as what L&D seeks to do, you see the person will constantly and continuously be doing training programs. Those short-term programs, those short-term interventions that really don't, they don't carry you beyond a particular period, all right? So I'm putting that challenge to us that we must know that we are learning and performance officers. We are learning and business performance advocates, not just learn. You know, I don't think any organization goes by. I don't think there's any training department anymore, or training departments in any proper what's it called, organization, any forward-looking organization now. That's for the 19th century, right? We're either performance professionals, learning and performance, you know, advocates, or we are learning and business advocates. That's what we are. Anybody sitting in the learning function, and I keep saying HR as well, you are first and foremost a business person, and then you're offering HR and learning services to your colleagues, and you are learning, you are providing that service from a consulting point of view because you understand the value that learning brings to the table. I am hoping that we're on the same page, right? I wish we can speak, but you understand the challenge we are having tonight. So I'm reading your chats, just keep them coming. Okay. Sorry, Liam, can I pause and is there a point in time we're going to give our friends opportunity to say something? I've been speaking for 43 minutes. Oh, sorry, 40 minutes thereabouts. So
when you are through with your slides, we'll allow them when you are through. Okay,
fine, good. Let me run a bit. Okay, so let me move on to the instructional development framework, instructional design framework, or people call it the learning and development approach. Most of us have heard of the ADDIE model. Okay, I'm sure you all are familiar with this. Yes, thank you, Howlat. Okay. Now, just to break it down, I remember when I first saw this, I was like, what is this? There was ADDIE, there was SAM, there was another one, you know, like 4 different approaches to implementing learning in an organization. Okay. This is the entire gamut of the L&D practice, okay? But I'm just putting it here because I know that some people here may not be familiar with this, okay? But it mustn't go in this format. You know, many times we like to just copy things and use them like this, but this is just for a talking point, right? Sorry, Martin, what did you stop using? Clarify it to me, let me be sure. It must be something I said earlier on, so I know I'm aligned with you. Thank you. All right, so okay, ADDIE, all right, so good. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so it depends, right? A lot of us just see things and use them as they are, but there are certain interventions that this may not apply for. But for you to understand, right, for those of us who are not in the learning space, this is the model that describes the end-to-end of learning. And what it's simply saying is that before you go ahead to implement any learning program, first and foremost, find out what are the needs of your learners? I realize that even onboarding programs, you can corroborate this if you are with me. You know that most times your onboarding programs are cast in stone. You bring all departments to come and say what they want to say. Some come talk about marketing, some come talk about our culture, some come talk about this, that, that. But nobody considered the need of the learners to even ask these people what are your learning needs? We must continuously see every opportunity to bring people together in a learning environment as an opportunity to build capability. So you must assess. It's important to understand where they are coming from. If you're speaking to people in the room without no clue about what their needs are, you are most likely going to be speaking above their heads. And an onboarding program, for instance, is a program that should help your newly hired employees hit the ground running. That's actually the design of it. Even though some onboarding programs differ in terms of timing from organization to organization. But whichever it is, it's important to do a quick assessment, okay? Quick data you can gather from your learning or your target audience to ensure that you understand what those areas are, that their needs are, where they are currently, and then know where you're going to emphasize and highlight, okay? When you have gathered data as to what the needs are, then the next thing is to, based on the data, begin to determine what the learning goals will be. What are the outcomes? What are the performance objectives? What are the learning outcomes? What should the content be? What would you want to be focusing on? Based on the gaps, based on the target audiences, based on the people you have seen and the information you have about them, you then determine the learning methods you understand you want to use, your learning approaches. When you have all noted all of this out, you now begin to develop them, put them together in actionable plans, all right? You begin to put your materials together, put your data together, put all that you have gathered to deliver that learning. When you now have that, you move on to the implementation of it. When you implement it, is simply the training aspect of it. Once you're done with training, you now begin to evaluate, all right? But most times we play needs assessment is wishy-washy. We don't take time to do this, and then our training programs and our learning interventions are often a sham. They're often a sham. You know, most consultants who offer training today, you find out that most of their training is just to tick the boxes. And whenever I'm in front of them, I have opportunity to confront them, you find out they've not done a thorough work, all right? They've not dived deep into profiling who they're speaking to. And I want to plead with you. We are professionals. We're not drug dealers. We don't sell we don't sell medicines in the bus. Just like medical practice, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Please note it down again. Prescription without diagnosis, a person without diagnosis is malpractice. In the same way, you cannot be determining training for your people without diagnosing properly. And your assessment, your needs assessment or your training analysis is your point of diagnosis. So we don't sell drugs in the bus. We don't sell paraga by the roadside. You know, we don't sell agbo. You know, all those things are things we sell without measurement, all right? But we must prescribe, we must diagnose, prescribe, and measure, all right, as professionals. So this is what profession demands. The business will not ask you for less. The world of work today and the people you are bringing on board today, they may not know it in this fancy way we know it, but something in their mind will tell them that something is off when they're not getting the right value from us. So if you didn't get anything from me today, that's one thing you must take away, okay? Diagnosis, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, all right? And that's just speaking to that ADDI concept, the need assessment of the ADDI concept. This is just me putting the game in practice. There is one project that enabled me to tease out the step-by-step approach, how we deliver the leadership development approach using the ADDI model. This is a while ago, though. We're not going to be going through this because of our time, but just to let you know that this is ADDI in practice, all right? We got a group of people together, just remove the real names, but this is actually a live document we used in designing a leadership development program for a big corporation, all right? And you will find in those phases the step-by-step approach in going through those 5 stages, from the analysis to the design to the development to the implementation and then to the evaluation. All right, I will still share this with you all so that you will you can read on your own. Then of course I would like to hear from some of us the experiences you had, you know, in using your what has been working for you in recent time. So it's a rigorous work. I tell my people that I work with that a training program is the little and the smallest aspect of L&D. The heavy lifting comes from the ideation, the designing, all right? Then the work after. The biggest work in capacity building and in learning and development is the pre-learning activities and the post-learning activities. Anybody can stand in front of anybody with a fine slide, all right? So I really don't consider that as anything. But the thing is, what do you need to do to ensure that my people are able to take what they are learning to their place of work? Like I say, learning that cannot be retrieved has not been gained. So that's my work, to ensure that learning can be retrieved and learning can be gained. Okay. So I'll give a typical example because I see that Loretta is asking a question, okay, about, and of course your colleagues have actually answered you. In analyzing your training need, who do you work with as a HR manager? So I said it in the last time we were having this HR learning session. The line managers own the talent. We are facilitators of corporate performance. HR is the midwife of corporate performance. That's what I learned from Mrs. Enife Atobileyo, my mentor in the HR universe. HR professionals are midwives of corporate performance. What does that mean? We facilitate the process, all employee processes, we facilitate them. We provide consulting support, we provide professional support, we provide unbiased, objective support to ensure that things are done the way they ought to do. But you see, if you're going to be training a group of people, for instance, the owners of those people are their line managers, all right? Now, performance gaps are situated in the business. The line managers are the ones who have these performance conversations with them. They hold the monthly MPR with them. They have the performance appraisal review discussions with them. Are you following me? So they pretty much have the data of these people empirically and, of course, codified. They are seeing these people every day. They know the areas they are pulling their weight. They are watching the numbers every month. They know who is doing what and who is not doing what. You can't go above their heads to be determining training. So what we normally typically will do in my organization is that we help them in generating a template. So HR, again, as a facilitator, one of your work is that you must be adept in building and designing quick to use tools to help your line managers do the work you want them to do for you. If you're asking them to go and be developing those tools, you're not going to, if it's a kind of fast-paced environment where I work, nobody's going to answer you. You want them to have coaching conversations, do the one-pager for them. You want them to do trainees analysis, do the one-pager for them, or do the Excel sheet for them, all right? And explain it to them, have a roadshow, engage them together, gather them together, and then have the conversations. What you can also do if you're in a large organization is to work with your HR business partners who are more closer to the business, and then engage them, sell them your vision, provide them all the support, and then monitor them. Because if you're sitting in an organization of 4,000 employees like I am sitting, You know that, of course, you will fail if you want to do that yourself. So you work with your HR business partners, you work with your line managers, not even your HODs. Your HODs, you work with them for buying, and they drive it from that strategic point of view. They must know what you're doing, all right? We don't sneak around in HR. You are right on the table with management. Whatever you're doing it with their consent. Some of the emails should come from their line HODs. You can draft it for them like I normally will do. I'm working with the technical team. I sit down with the technical leadership. We agree on what to do. We draft the email. They write it. The queries come from them. The heat comes from them. I'm standing on the side providing support. Are you getting that drive? And that's how we work. All right. That's how we roll to achieve results. Right. So we send out these templates at the beginning of the year. We give them a month or two. They populate it. We review them, provide the feedback, look at it very critically for alignment, because sometimes you see a lot of discrepancies. And then with that, we now go ahead to deal. Okay. So we can't really say enough in that regard, but we'll just pause there. I mentioned something earlier I would like to ask you again. Before I just introduce briefly the concept of learning transfer, why do you think that people learn and they don't practice? They don't put it to practice. Why do they come to a learning environment? They hear nice things. When you ask them, all they're able to tell you is how nice the food was and how beautiful the environment was. 1 month down the line, go back to them, they can't even remember that such a session happened. Why? Or why are they even unwilling to use what they learned, you know, in practice? You can drop your notes. Corporate culture may not allow innovation. Okay. So, but okay, Ademola says not clear learning objective. I agree with that. When we don't have clear learning objectives, sometimes they're not able. Well, that's partially correct. Integration was not designed, Martin says in the training. You get information which really doesn't help in performing a task. So there is nothing to integrate. Correct? Absolutely. People don't see the necessity and relevance of the training program. Yeah. Learning is not exactly relevant. Environment does not support implementation. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Environment does not support implementation. Are the skills learned relevant to their roles? So now let me ask some of you, our digital equipment, Samuel says, yeah. So for these issues that you have raised, for instance, all right, skills are not relevant to their roles, or people don't see the necessity and relevance of the training, or there's nothing to integrate. Martin, can you guys tell me, is there anything you have done to bridge this gap? Somebody said, Favor says it must be a village people syndrome. So what have you done? No needs assessment. Okay. What have you done to ensure that these challenges, because apparently most of us are speaking from our own experiences, how did you bridge this gap before I move into the next item? I'd like to hear from us, please. Remember I said, I'm also here to learn from you. So we'll be doing the thing together. I'm sure you meant gamification, read one. Hands-on session. Sometimes hands-on session finishes in classroom. Tutu, you agree with me, right? So, Femi, how do you carry line managers to support implementation? Ask for feedback on previous sessions. Not exactly, Caleb, right? Because I've asked these things before. And all I see, when we get to the evaluation now, I'll talk about it. All I see from what people are saying already, you're not moving beyond level 1 and level 2. These are things that happen in class and perhaps at the max 1 month after. They will not learn. So there is, in transfer of learning, there is intentional decision not to learn or not to apply what has been learned. And so, like somebody rightly said, in most cases also, there is what you call the environment not allowing people to practice learning. Okay, I agree absolutely with that. So what do you do now? Okay, I will answer that question so that I can run. My time is running fast. I will come back to this in detail, but let me just say something now. I typically, in my function, try to have, most times, like we said, some of the things that are missing here, why people don't get engaged or learn, particularly when we come to our internal programs, particularly for internal programs. The expertise or the capacity of the instructor is very critical. Most people who, people take it for granted that a subject matter expert is a good trainer. Now, training or learning delivery, it's a technical practice of L&D, and it's one of the core competencies of the ATD model. Okay, learning delivery is a learning track on its own, which people need to be equipped with to deliver. Now, all our learning programs in an organization is not pedagogy. We are into where we pedal andragogy, right? We teach adults. And when your instructors are not schooled with the principles of adult learning, learning will not stick. So you need to ask yourself, what role have I played to facilitate the understanding of adult learning principles in today's world of work? It is our duty in HR to ensure, because the nicest programs, right, that you invest money on, no matter how well designed they are useless except the people who came for that training takes it to their jobs. So I'm first of all focusing on our internal faculty, but I also realize that a lot of us work with external vendors as well. And my question to you is, what sort of demands are you placing on them? Or they just send you a very fine proposal. Oh, they saw that they've trained GTB before, they've trained CBN, they've trained one of these big companies, and you just allow them. I don't do that. Even when I'm buying off-the-shelf programs, we must curate it to meet the needs of my people. Your role, remember I said you're a learning performance person, advocate, okay? We are learning and performance advocates, so we must continue to keep our eyes on the ball. So whatever program it is you're providing for me, I want to see how it speaks to my people. I want to see your capability in delivering it. I want to understand your blend of approaches, how you're going to do, what you're going to do before training, what you're going to be doing in the class, and what you're going to be doing after the class, before I will tell you how I'll come in any way. All right? That's my duty. And some people think I can be harsh sometimes. But guys, if it's my money, I won't let it go like that now. Are you following me? So we need to play that role of a facilitator to ensure that all of these things are in place, and then they can be comfortable to hit it. Learning fails not in the classroom. It fails at the point of assessment and design. Once the design is wrong, you'll be speaking to the wrong audience. They will not learn. They will not find it relevant. They will not see an alignment. They will not see the need. So what is learning transfer? Simply put, is a process of applying acquired knowledge to new situations or to solve real-life challenges. Companies waste billions of naira annually in training people who don't use it. In some years ago, I went for a conference in the US, and quite a number of people came from two of our big government parastatals. And now, while the learning sessions were going on, they were drinking coffee. I was going to the bathroom one of those times. You understand? You understand? They were there, and it just occurred to me that this guy just came here for the extra code. 5 days of hard dollars thrown into the dustbin. I was also involved in one other one. I was part of the faculty training principal managers, AGM, senior people in one of the big government parastatals. It was two-sided. One was in Abuja, one was in Lagos. And you see, once it was Friday, they were forcing us to end the session by 11 o'clock. I told them if they want to go, they can go. I cannot end 11. This is a 9 to 4 p.m. agreement. You understand? So we must ensure that we play our role to stop that leakage, income leakage to our business. I know the typical Nigerian will say, "Is it my father's business?" But you owe it to your professional, vows to ensure that you protect the interest of your people and your business. And as learning professionals, we must ensure as much as possible. You won't get it 100% of the time, don't get me wrong, but as much as possible. One of my metrics is percentage of, turn downs in my learning programs, percentage of relevance in my learning program. All right. So it's very key to me. So we must ensure that money is not bleeding on our watch. Okay. So we also need to understand learning. Like I said initially, if we're going to ensure that learners learn well, you must be interested in your faculty, you must be close to your faculty, and you must ensure that they are equipped with what it takes for any learning engagement to be effective. All right. So how competent are your faculty? Okay. We had a faculty review, a vendor review yesterday or the day before yesterday with my colleagues. I don't know whether any of them are here, and one of my colleagues just told me, that was on Friday, said, just look at this person's presentation slide. How can I bring this woman in front of my class when they don't even know how to even present information in a manner that the eye can appreciate? I know you may not understand as a learning professional, but you see, you learn, 70% of what you learn comes from what you see. You understand? For a particular kind of learners, I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. So yes, they are called visual learners. Okay. So it's your duty to ensure that your facilitators are all of these and more. The last one is important to me, the ability, the second and the last one, the understanding of how people learn. How versed are they in the principles of adult learning? How well do they understand instructional design methods available for them? What do they typically use? How do they facilitate learning? Do they understand the concept of learner motivation? Do they understand the concept of efficiencies in the classroom? And all of those things, you understand. If you don't know those things, you're not going to make learning stick. Okay, so it's important. We need to have people, we ourselves must understand learning. We need to partner with people in our businesses or with people, with vendors who understand learning in order for them to ensure that transfer happens. Again, one key concept in learning that I think we are all familiar with is the 70-20-10 model to learning. Okay, and what this simply says is that, you see that training that people are always clamoring for, that send me to training, send me to LBS, send me to one thing. It only amounts or accounts to 10% of your learning in a particular function, right? 10% of what you learn, real learning happens in the classroom. But you see, most of the bulk of our learning are done through experiences. Learning on the job, cross-functional projects from your training to real life situation, assignments and short-term tasks, they form the bulk of your learning. New tests, new assignments by your line manager or working together with your colleagues, they're the bulk of learning. So you see the key role a line manager plays in organizational learning to ensure that that environment is created for this, for learning to actually happen. Let me tell you one thing we normally do before I lose that thought, even though I know it's at the last slide, but in case Oluyemi comes for me, let me say it now. How many of you know of the learning contract? Now, the learning contract is a document I use to bring to life the 4 levels of evaluation. In that contract, you bring the line manager to the party. You get them to sign and commit that, key things that enables learner to be motivated and allows for them to provide an environment for learning post-training, okay? So, and it's because I understand that most of learnings happens on the job, and if the line manager does not provide that opportunity, learning will not happen. And of course, we design programs to ensure that what they are being taught can be reused in the office. Of course, 20% of learning is social. People like to learn with groups, informal environment. That's why I talked about being creative and innovative in your learning practice. If you're not creative and innovative, no creativity will come out from your learning, okay? So the social learning started becoming big in the last 10 years or so, okay? And there was a huge research and study done in India by just leaving children in front of an ATM in an open place. And that was a very mind-blowing learning for me, the data that was collated. People learn better, not when they're under the stick and the cane, but they learn better when they're with people colleagues, people who they have fond memories with, friends. They learn better in an informal atmosphere. The learning stays longer in atmospheres that are not toxic at all, okay? So we need to look at this, even though I know the 710 approach there have been different schools of thought here and there, but I'm not talking to executives here. So let's understand this and the face value of it. Because in actual sense, in real life, it's not as linear as 70-20-10. If you actually calculate it or check it, for some programs, it could be 50-30-10. While for some, it could be 55-40, 10 or 5, it depends. But what we are saying, that bulk of learning, the idea is that the bulk of learning comes from the job, okay? And of course, social learning and then formal learning is the least of it. But most of the time, you can see that if we are focusing on the least place that learning happens, what is happening? There's a lot of organizational loss. There's a lot of monies we are losing if we're not considering the entire gamut of learning and development practice. So learning and development, like we said, is not just about training. Training is that thing that happens in the classroom to fix a gap. But there are other avenues where learning exists, all right? There are places where you have tacit knowledge, where you need to pull them out for them to become explicit knowledge to solve issues in the organization, all right? There are exchange programs you can do. There are cross-functional projects. There are short-term projects you can do. You can facilitate the reading of books. You can do learning sessions from projects. There are 1,001 things you can do, guys, that are creative, that will boost learning, that will make your learners motivated, and they will come back to show you what they've done. The kind of feedbacks I get give me joy sometimes. When a boss is telling me that you've trained my people to go and learn how to use this thing, I need to learn how to interpret what they are coming to show me. It's interesting when you're providing training for a certain kid of staff and people in your senior management are jostling and they are saying, please, I want to be a part of it. Success is happening somewhere, all right? And, our value must be well sought for. And that's because we must continuously play our role as performance consultants in our organization, okay? So I run. In case you are asking me any question, I'm not looking at the questions just yet. I will come back to them. So I want to try and end. We have a few more slides to go, The last bit I want to talk about in learning transfer is what I was talking about. These are the core concepts of adult learning, right? A learner, a facilitator must understand, a HR person must also understand that people learn differently. So it is not proper that because you say learning happens, you're doing learning in a classroom, it's just about slides and slideshows and flip charts. you must have a learning checklist, and your checklist must cater for the kinds of learners you have. You have the visual learners who like to see and read, and they like charts. They like to see what they are learning. They learn better when they see. Auditory learners like to hear. They want to hear music. They want to hear you audibly, all right? They want to also speak to their own hearing, okay? They have people who like to write. They want to do exercise. They want to be able to write down something. They have kinesthetic learners who like to do things, okay? They like to be hands-on. They want to be in role plays. They want to do quick projects. You can even incorporate games, all right? But your game must have a learning angle to it, right? Are you following me? So all of this is even incorporated in this session I've had with you today, aside from showing you a video because of time. When I do videos when I have a whole day to myself. I don't play videos and move on. I play videos and debrief. So I left that bit out. Every engagement I have, I try to tick off, because you can't tell. Even though your needs assessment must throw up the kind of learners you have and give you a slight sense of their identity and their learning preference. However, you must come into every learning environment, and you must prep your facilitators to come into a learning environment catering to the needs of the kind of learners that you have. Are you following me? All right. So in your design, you must incorporate all these trainer tactics that I have here. I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time here, because these are things you can just read up by yourself, okay? If there are other kind of learners you know about, you could just type them out in the chat box, okay? But just know this from research, that your learners find themselves in these 4 buckets. And this, remember, we're in a constant stage of flux. So things keep changing and scope keeps widening. It's possible that in each of these boxes, there are different variations, right, of learners, and you must understand them. You must be equipped to tease out this kind of learners and then cater for them. There is no excuse if you are not able to cater to your learners. Your faculty may not, but you have no excuse as HR not to be versed in understanding your learner types. Are we together? Can I move along?
Yes, sir.
So, thank you. So, so if we cater for these learners, chances are that learning will happen. I will still come back to that and tell you, and still talk about the thing that will allow learning to transfer to happen. Okay. And the last bit in our talking point today is learning evaluation, which we hardly do. Okay. Our learning evaluation is quite peripheral, and the huge data that we need to get from it, we hardly do get. Okay. So why do we measure? Again, is my learning moment. I want to learn from my professors here. Why do we measure learning and development initiatives in the organization? iPhone, can you please rename yourself? I understand that one of our modus operandi here is that we're not anonymous, all right? William, am I correct?
Yeah, we are not anonymous.
So I don't know who iPhone is. He's asking a question, examples of projects. So I'm asking, why do we measure our learning and development initiative or interventions, right? Sean says to determine ROI. ROI that has been elusive to HR professionals over the years, even though we have a formula. But I'm sure those of you who have tried it, does it work? Did it work for you? Did you get that answer Was it in percentage or in decimals? Okay, fantastic. To measure training effectiveness, check for modifications, know if gaps exist, check effectiveness of learning program, ensure relevance and ROI. Fantastic. You see, I should just give this tick to Martins and Co. Okay. Yeah, we are correct. We measure learning programs and developmental interventions for all the reasons you have said, and then some bit more, okay? There was a time there's a critical program we do in my place of work for a group of people we consider as critical roles in the organization, right? And it was the first time we're doing that thing. The faculty also was new. Just two members were old, and it was a flagship program. It was a new program we're doing, and going into that program, I knew that they also had a learning curve, because I had to put it together, a training for them, just like we said, so that they're equipped with adult learning principles. Even though they are subject matter experts, you can't take it from them, but there was need for them to understand some of the things we know in order for them to be successful. Okay, we had that conversation, we did a test run, and then we went ahead to deploy the training for our field-facing employees. And when we finished, a week down the line, we came back. I normally would do evaluation in two parts. So for my internal program, where I have a combination of faculty, I get their line manager, who's also a part of the faculty. Sometimes the HOD is a de facto dean of affairs. And then we sit down together and do hard feedback. All right, so we do an evaluation. We would, of course, evaluate them. The participants evaluate them. The L&D team evaluates them, and we combine this data, and then we share the results with the faculty. And then we began to make changes, like, we talked about improving the learning program. For instance, one key thing that came up from that analysis was that there was a part of the program that had to do with chemistry and mathematical calculations, right? We found out that our guys were better positioned to learn that particular module in the morning. We checked the pass rates, and we found out that we compared between the first program and the second program. The pass rate was better in the second program when we did a test run and moved the program to the morning hours. And that's how we changed it. We also we swapped facilitators around, and we removed some facilitators completely. But of course, we didn't tell them so. We replaced them. So the smart way to deal with that is let every facilitator present two people. Of course, the line manager will nominate, and they will come with two people, and then they know that you don't own this space until after a while. Some people just own that space naturally by themselves. So without those levels, those kinds of evaluation, we won't have known how to make those changes. And the program recorded a huge success. I actually can tell you that I can link 900 to 1 billion revenue to that learning intervention for 400 employees that we eventually did. The test run was for 50 people. And then when we now cascaded it down, we were confident enough to move full scale, having made those changes, right? So yes, you evaluate in order to improve the effectiveness of your program, okay? We also evaluate, like we have said, to demonstrate the value of the training to an organization. Most times, if you are like me, I fall into the category of the shy people. I believe that we should just work. I don't like paparazzi. Just do your work. Let your work speak for itself. But sometimes, we've very heard it many times, perception is reality. When you don't perceive that you're not doing the work, then you're not doing the work. I still don't believe in that anyway. I believe in your work speaking for you. But sometimes if you don't blow your trumpet, nobody will blow it for you. So when you are I'm able to give you the data I gave you just a minute ago, because there was evaluation, there was an assessment, okay? I can draw a clear line of sight to some aspect of my organizational productivity to my learning programs. I remember some time ago, we reached a new revenue peak, and I was telling my chief commercial officer that, you see the impact of my program to your people. And she smiled. Unlike before, they will say, don't say that thing. What do you mean? Is it one common training? I don't do training. We've gone past training. We provide learning and developmental interventions. Training is just one of the channels we use to facilitate those, okay? So when you measure and evaluate your learning programs, you are able to determine the value to your organization. You have data to show without boboing that is actually the value that you have brought on the table, okay? Then of course, you know what methods work, like I discussed in that story I told us earlier on. When you evaluate a program, you're able to tell the instructional strategies that work, and of course, how your learners perceive the program. You also determine who your key faculty is. For me, I do a faculty award annually as one additional way to motivate my, what I would call a strong internal faculty. I spend money on them, even though we give them, what we give them is a token, but it's highly appreciated. And I found it to be engaging. So for people to feed into that pool, people who I'm going to reward, I have various sources of data that I need to make that decision. Okay, and evaluation is one of them. Yeah. And of course, most of us here would have heard of Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. Like I said, most of the time when we are evaluating our learning programs, even though we talk about ROI, I don't know how many of us really go down the 9 years of ROI, okay? So Kirkpatrick, he designed this model in the 1950s, and he's one that made it popular, the levels of training, learning evaluation. And according to him, level 1 of evaluating a learning program is to check participants' reaction. And that your evaluation form or your evaluation sheet is called the happy sheet or the emotional sheet, because it's simply checking how they responded to their program. So the relevance of that training to them, how it went, sequencing, depending, there are certain things you want to ask. There's no fixed way. So I don't give people, I don't give you templates. You need to determine or design what it is, but usually your happy sheet shouldn't be more than 10 pages. I used to say, 10 questions. I used to say that before, but really right now, 5 intelligent questions, a blend of questions, multiple choice, Likert scale, and open-ended where they write will give you all the data you want. So between 5 to 7 questions is sufficient. 1 page, it has to be easy and quick to fill for them to give you that feedback, all right? But the thing with this thing is, it has to be done at the end of the learning program immediately. Most times, the learning experience goes with the facilitator or with the end of that session. Are you following me? So your level 1 evaluation is when you are checking reaction. But all this tells you, and the tool to doing that is your evaluation form or your participant feedback, what I call the happy sheet. And all you are checking is their response to that learning event and how valuable it was. But this will not take us to to being that valuable learning performance advocate, okay? While it is good, I would like to encourage us to move beyond this. Level 2 evaluation is checking learning. Level 2 evaluation is checking to see whether learning has happened. Like I said before, I repeat again, learning that cannot be retrieved has not been gained. So when you put people in a learning environment, it's necessary, beyond just checking how they feel about the program, you're checking their emotional meter. You need to check whether the needle has moved. And one great way to do this is your pre and your post tests. Your pre-tests can be, your pre and post tests can be the same questions if it's not a high impact program. Otherwise, you can alter the questions, but around the same concepts. There's something I also do, but that's another conversation, using the bullseye method just to check how far learning has happened. So they come to class, you ask them questions, you can use, if it's an online learning session like this one, you can use a poll to test knowledge on particular concepts which you'll be talking about. Then at the end of that program, do the same poll and you will see. So your comparison between pre-poll and post-polling will show you the dimension to which learning has happened, and that becomes your learning, the degree of to which learning has happened, okay? So sometimes in-class tests, post-training tests, assessments, and those program evaluations can give you the source for checking whether learning has happened. But again, this is just level 2. This is this normally doesn't still yet go to whether they can take learning to the office. Now, to know whether behavior is changing, because the goal of a learning program is to change behavior. That's what we said from the beginning, remember? Is to change behavior, to add and to contribute to business bottom line. And for this to happen, now, the first 2 can happen immediately after a learning program. Learning can also happen 4 to 6 weeks after a learning program, where you can check to see how much you're able to retain what they've learned. You may want to do that a little bit after the time. Then, of course, when you want to check for behavior, remember that normally, we even learn from physical science, from behavioral science, that it takes you a minimum of 21 days to learn a new habit, okay? So it will not be wise to expect behavioral change to occur the week a training program has happened. And you as a facilitator may not be the one to be able to determine this. So you must find a way to tease out learning and behavioral change through your learning program, working with your line managers. They are the ones who are observing these guys. They are the ones who check them out. They are the ones who see and who can do that comparison between before and after a learning program. All right. And for this levels 1 to 3, that's what I have in my learning contract. A learning contract that will be signed by the line manager. It will contain the learning objective for that program, his commitment not to trouble the participant in the 2 or 3 days of learning, and then his commitment to evaluate him months after he has learned, his commitment to ensure he gives him a project that will force or demand that skill that has just been acquired. This will be signed by the line manager and that direct report coming for the training. And then it will be documented, all right? Then your duty is to come back to them later on to check, to administer that questionnaire, or to have a focused interview, group interview, or whichever medium you want to do. But you have to check and collect that data. These are the data you will keep together in determining your ROI at the end of the day, okay? So your level 4 is results. This person who have expended on, what were his KPIs before? What are they saying now? How much has he contributed to the business? How much has he added to our value? How much are we able to draw a line of sight between his training program and the business results, you know, from his own contribution? So there's something we do, it's called value reporting. I'll just give an example. If you want to train a technician and for instance, or maybe a salesperson whose key KPI is conversion rates, monthly conversion rates, all right, and actual sales, and then maybe sales volume per month. It's very wise that before you send him for a training program, is taking for granted you have checked his gaps, you've checked the needs, you are clear to a large extent of what this guy's gaps are and what the learning needs are. Okay. You should also, alongside that data, get what his current run rate is, his current conversion rate, and his current target versus volume, or his current target. All right. You need to have that data. After your training program, a month, 2, 3 down the line, you need to continuously compare what these outcomes are benchmarked against what they were before he went on training. Now you're going to see a trend. Those trends that you're seeing, you can actually quantify them in monetary terms. That will be your value of spending money on that guy. Somebody whose job is to, maybe a technical person who needs to, a well engineer, or somebody who needs to fix faults in a particular time and needs to clear them with error free. You need to check his fault log before you send him on that training program, and then come back to check. You will find out that the turnaround time gain post-training, you can tie to every hour of work and calculate the value. I know that ROI is net program benefits times 100 over program costs. That is the calculation. But let's save ourselves of all that academic jargon and speak to what really works in our places of work. Okay, so you are training somebody for customer service who's taking calls. You need to be able to check how many calls is best able to clear in 1 hour before the training. Get a 3-month data or 6 months data, and then come back and train. I'm talking about level 4 now. 2, 3, 4 months down the line, compare these numbers again, and then watch the trend. Therein lies your contribution to the business. I should be able to say that you trained 5 people whose call acceptance rate was maybe 4/10 before training, but now is 7/10 or 8/10. That additional 3 or 4, that's your business contribution to the business. And if we continue to think like this and be able to put numbers to these kinds of interventions, we will be adding value to the business, and nobody's going to cut your budget. I think I'm tired of hearing my own voice. I think at this point, I will stop. So let me allow Martin to talk to us about the TDPR model. In fact, you said you don't use ADDIE anymore. I'd like to hear what you use now in addition to the TDPR model. Then we can take other questions. Thank you, guys. Let me pause here for now so that it's your turn to talk. Guys that train, they try you. That's us. All right, guys. Martin, I've called you out. 2 things you are owing us. You don't use ADDIE anymore. What do you use? And then quickly run us through the TDPR model in evaluation. Yeah? Thank you, guys. Thank you. William, please help us unmute Martin if it's time. I think I have taken us into Q&A now.
Okay, thank you very much. And I totally was not expecting this, and it's my pleasure. So I'm joining from Nairobi, Kenya. And,
Martin, thank you.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I am an instructional designer, and I've had quite a number of things that align with my thinking. And also, I'm also a member of ATD. right?
No
Having
wonder.
done my certification with ATD.
No wonder.
So number
Great.
one, I learned the AD model with ATD. Then when I was doing the e-learning certificate, that's when I met Merrill's first principle, and I took on a course on first principles of instruction. Basically, it is now where you, instead of having a training topic, you have the task that you want the learner to be able to do after the training. And so you develop the activation. What will you do for the activation? The demonstrations, the application, and the integration. So for the last 1 year and a half, 1 year and a quarter, I've been using first principles of instruction for designing my learning. And it's useful for both e-learning and for face-to-face. Now,
Martin, now I know where you're coming from. If I had known that you're an ISD guy, I wouldn't have called you. So you are playing above us. Okay, so I understand perfectly, right? And I've been in those, I understand perfectly. But you know, this is not technical L&D sessions, right? These are the generality of our HR practice people, our HR professionals. So that route might be too technical, right? So, but I agree with you, absolutely. But it's something that we can also still learn, actually, yeah.
Yes, and I see Ademola, who we work together with, have done his sessions. He's participated in my sessions since 2020. So, and again, it's only when we put across those hard questions to HR that they see the need to acquire competencies in L&D. Because if you look at the model of L&D in terms of competencies and HR, there's a gap. Now, to the TDPR model, this is a model that actually looks at turning L&D departments from support to commercial departments. Sort of like they're able to measure what amount of revenue came out from their training, right? So I know there's a book about it. There's some webinars about it. Chief Learning Officer, the website runs this kind of webinars. So again, it's very interesting where you're turning a L&D from a support department to a commercial. Sort of like you're saying, I did customer service training. I spent 1 million. How much did that 1 million actually increase customer revenue based on customer service, either by reduction of time taken to serve customers or solutions to customer problems in the shortest time, which all equate to some money, which is in the what is the business is actually doing, and what actually the L&D is supposed to be doing to support the strategy of the business. Thank you very much. And I hope I have answered those two questions.
Oh, yes, thank you. Like I said, for the TDPR, if you have those links, please share. I'm sure it will benefit some of us here. Thank you very much.
Let me just do that.
That's how I like to, yes. Thank you very much. Oliemi, back to you now.
Okay, thank you so much, Ikechukwu, and of course, thank you so much, Martins, joining us all the way from the other side of Africa. It is good to collaborate and share notes so that we can all be better. So quickly, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, I would like you to ask. But just before we do that, you can also drop your questions in the chat box. If you have dropped them earlier, just copy it and paste it back so that Ikechukwu just be, I want you to catch your breath. While you are catching your breath, Ikechukwu just be going through this chat box to see questions you may want to respond to. But I quickly want to call someone who has been at this platform, HR mentorship generally, and this particular learning intervention. Dr. Lazis, you have about 2 or 3 minutes. He also has a vast experience in L&D. He has worked in major multinationals, at least I can remember Coca-Cola, and he has also written a text co-authored. I'll just want to give him 2 or 3 minutes to share 1 or 2 things with us briefly. Then we'll come back to you, Ike. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Olazis.
Okay. Good evening, everyone in the house.
Good evening, sir.
I sincerely appreciate the platform. It's becoming so robust. though without any commercial returns, but I know it's an investment. They're really worth our efforts and worth our time. As Tirale said, actually, the resource person of today is highly resourceful. I see him as a L&D personified. And I sincerely thank him. Part of what I put in the chat room is I actually want to see the latest, as at the last second, of a new normal in the community of learning management system and facilitation. You've been able to actually justify that. Thank you. Since I have a very short time, I've been given the slots for a few minutes to actually introduce to you. I know many of us here must have known about the book. The book is talking about it's a compendium of learning management system and facilitation. All the stuff that Ichuku has actually been sharing with us, they are all in there. And of course, I'll call it, people call it the Bible of learning management system, learning management training system and facilitation. It's actually a book we launched precisely June 9, 2022. It's a compendium of learning management system facilitation, a cookbook for the 21st century trainer, authored by my humble self, Dr. Olasukati Aziz, and my former boss and colleague, Mr. Johnson Oluwasuji. The 10th chapter book described as complete compilation of outstanding knowledge in the field seems a timely intervention in the area of learning, training, and development, even as the world seeks new understanding in the field of human development practice. We as author profile the way to human capital development challenge, covering the whole gamut of training, and with two cognizance of training and learning processes, analysis, design, implementation, and delivery, as well as evaluation, e-learning, distance learning, and entire process. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat room, this book was endorsed by the people like the current DG of ITF Industrial Training Fund, Sir Joseph Harry, the president of immediate past president of IBN, the president and chairman of Council of NIM, and of course, it is my delight to actually inform you that the foreword of the book was eloquently written by Mr. Segun Majid, FCIPM, the current president and chairman of council. We also have people outside the country, like Professor Fajano, the current vice chancellor of National University in Lesotho, is also one of those people, the authority that endorses it. So I'm appealing to you all to please, in case you have any interest in getting this, it's actually at an affordable price. You can link me up with it's okay, my phone number is 080-770-90015. I say that again, 080-770-90015. We have actually gotten a lot of order from learning centers, corporate agency, in-house learning faculty, and what have you, and people in area of learning, training, and development. Once again, Oluyemi Adeosun, I sincerely thank you for creating this platform for all of us across the value chain. When Kechuku was saying executives are not here, there are many executives that always hook on. It's a hybrid of the emerging leader, the leaders, decision makers across West Africa, not just only Nigeria. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ola Aziz Ashiwaju, as some of us prefer to also call you, a man that is extremely knowledgeable and yet also always exploring to learn a little more and to share his knowledge. Kechuku, I'm also happy to say to you today that we have other notable industry leaders, people like Emmanuel Michael, who will be speaking at the National Conference, International Conference, CIPM, later this month in Port Harcourt. We have people like Mrs. Florence Bolaji Lawal on this call. We have an elected council member of CIPM, my own very sister and friend, Mrs. Adiola Dekwiga, who consistently joins this session almost all the time. I also have Rita Babalola, who is also a renowned consultant. She has also facilitated on one of our sessions for us, and she's also consistently joining. Please, if I don't call your name, please don't be angry. I have quite a number of friends on this call tonight, and we are pretty excited to see you. Thank you so much, Sheya Bigbola, for joining as always. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so let's quickly see if over to you, Kechuku. Maybe want to respond to the questions on the chat. And if anybody has a question, raise up your hand. I will unmute you so that we can call it a wrap. Thank God tomorrow is Monday, and I'm saying it sincerely because I love Mondays, not because of what tomorrow represents. I love Mondays. So, okay, you want to respond to any questions you've seen so far on the chat?
So I'm checking, like, I've not seen, I know that one or two persons asked before, but I'm trying to scroll up now. I thought I was expecting them to paste it again, but it's fine. I'm just scrolling back up.
Okay, anyone wants to ask you a question? If you are sure that question has not been
I don't know. Okay, I think Loretta's question has been answered. The first one I see here is, okay, she says, how do you handle complaint from a staff that says line manager is not open with what he knows? Okay. That's a line manager who likes to work in silos. Okay, that's one. Second one, what details do we look for during the training needs analysis? Now, when a line manager says he's not open with what he knows, it's oftentimes, from my little understanding and my perspective, people refuse to train because of lack of, they refuse to share or transfer knowledge because of lack of ignorance. Or because of ignorance, lack of knowledge. There's usually that thought around, if I teach him now, he'll now know more than I do, and now be shine and things like that. Actually, when you teach others, you reinforce what you know. And I try to let line managers know that one of their core reasons for being there is to leave a legacy. You are carrying people's destiny in your hand. It's not just to come and boss people around and use them to get results. But the thing is, when they leave, what would they remember about you? What values, what are you implanting in them? Unfortunately, a lot of line managers are what you call career graveyards, right? People who come to them don't do any better. So it's our duty to continue to have those those tough conversations and get them to see. They don't know, they don't know. Then again, you need to also check. Sometimes, some of these youngsters also, they have a wrong approach, in getting things done. So you need to facilitate and create that balance to ensure that, transfer can happen. I give an example in where I had worked with my organization some time ago. There's this expat, it's an expatriate, and it just dawned on us that this guy was going to be leaving soon. And I know that there is nobody in the entire department that knows a tenth of what that guy knew. Guess what I did? We designed the school and made him the dean and ensured that the critical courses, he was the one that was going to deliver them. So we began to invest in that school. In fact, we went to partner with some other people. We told him, okay, just put your thoughts on paper. We'll do the slides for you. He was so excited. We did an opening ceremony. The CEO came, he spoke, we gave him time to speak. He gave an opening speech and he was excited. But you see, today we have better people in the organization today that has some of it. Even though we started late, we couldn't have teased out everything, but he had created many people. We have younger people now who are handling bigger things. So like I keep saying, we just have to continue to find the creative way to tease out and pull out these things from where they are hidden. Okay. So, but let your line managers know it's ignorance that is making them hide knowledge. All right. The more you teach, the more you enforce and reinforce learning. Okay. So take it as a challenge and as an opportunity to intervene. Remember, you are a facilitator of corporate performance. Don't be shy to jump into any conversation. Something happened recently. We're supposed to have a difficult conversation. It wasn't even my issue, but like I say, all the things I've said to you here, that's how I wrote, that's how I operate. So I asked them, we got in our HR business partner, got in the line function and met with the line manager and the technical lead in that area. And you could see they were resisting, but they were resisting because they didn't know what to say. We told them it's your conversation. We'll be there to ensure you don't take us to court. These are decisions we're going to say. So when they started, we're guiding them what to say, how to start, what not to say. When they finished, we debriefed and then excused the people because we're not going to get a particular set of engineers. We're not going to get moved to the next level because of performance issues. So what had to come. So when we're done, they were you could see the sigh of relief. So sometimes don't just take it that their defiance is ignorance. But you need to continuously play the role of a coach, of a consultant, and you see that this is why you must continue. You cannot not know. You must continue to know. You can't know everything, but like we said, learning is continuous. So we must continue to challenge ourselves, know where our gaps are, and then breach them through all the approaches that are available to us. Some of you have LMSs in your organizations, but you don't read it. You are very busy, okay? You must read. You must read. I hope I'm clear with that. What details do you look for during the training needs analysis? Now, let me also use this opportunity to say that while we do a needs analysis at the beginning of the year, most times, needs analysis is also an ongoing process. There are certain things that come up in an organization that require you to do a needs analysis. For instance, when you acquire a new technology, the learning needs of the people immediately will change. Why? Everybody who will be interacting with that new technology is a novice. They need to know. So their learning curve is steep as far as that technology is concerned. Or there's a new ERP or an application, you need to train people. There's a new regulation or a demand from your regulator, okay? And or a new reporting standard or something that comes from the industry generally. You must check again and ensure that your needs analysis for people in that particular area is updated. And then you begin to bring interventions to address that need, okay? So, but typically in a needs analysis, what you're looking for are the person's current strength, their areas of weaknesses, the training, the learning gap, the kind of gap that it is, and the proposed intervention, okay? These are the amidst other things, the key things there are the gaps, the type of gaps, the intervention, and how you want to go about it. Then you look at it and match it. You need to check that what is being sent to you is a correct reflection of the people's gap, so that you don't bring people to class and they tell you that, well, this one does not, I have no business with this training. That would be a failure on our side. So these are the 2 questions I've seen so far. If there's another one, if I've missed anyone, please let me help. I've checked. There's no other one after those ones.
There's one question.
Okay.
There's one question. I think it's from a doctor, someone who is an academic, PhD or that, but wants to transit to L&D in the private sector, in the industry. What advice or tips do you have for the doctor?
Okay, somebody who wants to transit to L&D from the academic sector, right?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
There is strong alignment because L&D is the academia of HR practice, if you will allow me, all right? So it's just to, what just needs to happen. The challenge that the academician would typically have is contextual learning delivery. You know, what must begin to change is that understanding of adult learning principles, and then ensuring that learning delivery and learning programs are continuously relevant to context. You know that if those of us who schooled in this country, we see how our lecturers lecture. That somebody is a professor or is in the forward of a university does not really mean that they understand andragogy. You know, they still carry on learning as if it's pedagogy. Are you following? So they are teaching as though, you know, it's about the handouts, about writing on the board, it's about the flip chart and all of that. They need to be adept with recent innovations in the learning space. They need to understand how LMSs run. They need to understand social learning. They need to understand bite-sized learning. They need to understand the entire gamut of blended learning. They need to understand the principles of the learning delivery learning methodologies, all right? How to use some approaches in the real life place of work. Okay, the academic institution is a different context from the organizational or the work institution. So it's an easy transition, if you ask me, but these are now the things that they need to learn and wherever they now want to go to, because even though we have learners in those buckets that we discussed, the need for learning differs from industry to industry. So again, the level of preparation will determine the level of preparation will be determined by the industry you're going to. Okay, so it's just for him or her to be looking for those opportunities. But I guess that the L&D space will need people of that caliber to be part of their team. I don't know if
Thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you so much, Ikechukwu. You have been extremely supportive. I want to thank the over 80-something people at some point who joined today's session. Thank you for your commitment. I know sometimes it's not easy, but we are committed. One of my colleagues and a sister asked me that, don't you think people will be fatigued with this back-to-back learning sessions? And I responded to her. I said, ma, do you know the number of series, Korean series? People are watching European Premier League matches back to back.
Oh, yes.
I said, this is perhaps more relevant to their destiny than football or than movie series. And she somewhat agreed with me. Please, don't get tired. I assure everybody on this journey that we have started this journey together. Okay, and I'm not referring to just HR mentorship alone. To all of us who are committed, who have our own personal learning university, please don't get tired. One day, you will learn so much that earning will become inevitable. And I'll say this in confidence, but I won't mention it. Ikechukwu, 1 or 2 people tonight have reached out to me to collect your number. So you'll be getting calls.
No, it's fine. I'm already seeing the LinkedIn.
I ready to change organization. I won't say more than that. But that's what knowledge does to you. You see, it's only mediocrity that people be dilly-dallying. When you become so prolific, when you become so proficient, your gender won't matter. Your ethnicity won't matter. Your age will not matter. Your competence will shine through. And I put it to us as I round up today, that please, I know some of us will say, Oluyemi, I already know more than where I am working, or I already know more than what I'm earning. Don't give up. And this is not aspire to perspire. Okay. When you have value to that level, and that's why the word breakthrough is not a religious word, it's an English word. It means when you load something to an extent, something, there will be an emergency, it will burst. Continue to load yourself. When the right opportunity comes, all the panelists will unanimously agree you are the best fit for the job. What you will ask for, they will even come back and double it. Ikechukwu can testify to this. Many people on this call can testify to this. Please hold on. So what I'll do briefly, Ikechukwu, I know I didn't tell you this, so let me just stop my recording.